Okay, Haley, what do you think?
Is that like different ways on spelling oxygen?
Okay, different ways of spelling oxygen? Okay. Mallory?
I see xylem in there, and why does the one that's like all alone have an E in front of the xylem?
It's just all by itself because I started a new column.
Yeah, I know, but like, why is there an E?
Why is there an E? That's an excellent question. Excellent question. Anybody else have anything to say about these lists?
And like, it's like the L and the Y are swapped with the E in front of the xylem.
Okay. Matthew?
For oxygen, there's two of the words have OC instead of OX.
Okay. They do. This, I'll tell you what this is. Where did I get this list of words? Do you recognize what's at the top of the list?
Yeah.
What is that? Pronunciation. Excellent. Somebody pronounce this for me. James?
Oxygen.
Okay. So flow it all together. Oxygen. This is how we pronounce the word oxygen. What is this word? How do we pronounce? Mallory?
Xylem.
Xylem. Right? This helps us know how to pronounce the word. Right? Okay. This list is all the different ways I found it spelled on your photosynthesis test. All the different ways that students spelled this word.
What?
Now remember I said it wasn't a spelling test. So I didn't say you better go home and study the word xylem, I want you to memorize it. It wasn't about that. But I thought, there's some interesting conversation we can have about all the different ways that it was spelled. So then this must be all the different ways that I found oxygen spelled on the photosynthesis test. Now I'll tell you one thing, when I looked at the spellings individually, I was like, that makes sense to me. I know why that person did that. I understand what they were thinking. Can anyone, Mallory, you brought up this one. Do you have any idea why a person would put an E in front of there?
They kind of sound out as xylem, like it has like an S.
X-line?
Well, it brings us back to
Oh
the
yeah.
grapheme X. And when we pronounce X in isolation, it kind of sounds like a E. So the person was thinking X, or did you realize there's 4 different phonemes for this grapheme? It can be pronounced 4 different ways. X, as in box or mix. Everybody say X, and then say box, mix. You hear it, right? Now it could be gz. Say that. Gz. As in exact. Do you hear it in an exact? It's certainly not this. It's not exact. It's exact. It's more like this. Then it could be ksh. Say that. I would like everybody to be participating here. Ksh. As in anxious. 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 And that's the X alone doing all of that. And then it could be pronounced as Z, as in xylophone, as in xylem. But if you look at the letter X and you think that way back you were told X is for X-ray, then you think that X has to always be that, X. So you see this word that is spelled X-Y-L-E-M and you think it must be pronounced exylem. I think that's what was going on here, exylem, right? This person was not aware that the X can be pronounced in 4 different ways in different words. And I think that's so important. I'm leaving the S up because we encounter that so often. But now I'm adding the X because it's interesting and we're going to start coming across words where we're going to find and we can add to this list. It'd be kind of neat to keep some lists of that. So I understand the E. It comes from somebody not having that idea that an X can be pronounced different depending on the word it's in, right? If we look at the IPA, I would like to point out each phoneme, each one of these symbols represents a specific phone or a specific pronunciation. So here's the first one, here's the second one, here's the third one, here's the fourth one, here's the fifth one. Xylem, right? How many of you have one of these, this symbol, when you write your name or when your name is in IPA? How many of you have that symbol when your name is in IPA? Okay, it's on your notebooks, right? You remember that symbol? Do you want to pull out a notebook and see or look at your name tag on the front of your desk?
Mine doesn't have it.
Okay. Katie, you have that symbol. What letter in your name gets this pronunciation? An E. So this symbol, and that is or it actually can have a range of pronunciations. It's an unstressed, very short sound. Who else has this symbol in their name? Thomas?
A?
It can also be represented by an A as in Thomas. Who else has it?
I have it at the Thomas one. It's mine said that.
As an A?
It's the last A.
Okay, Daniela. Okay. Mallory?
Mine's as an O.
Okay. Is it Mallory?
Yeah.
So it could also be an O. Okay, represented with the letter O.
As an A.
As an A? Okay. Excellent.
Mine is as an E.
E is like Caden. Okay. And then we have Jaden. Does anybody know that symbol is representing what letter in Jaden's name? You know how to spell Jaden?
I.
It's representing I.
Wait, those are the vowels. Except one.
Right. And we're missing you.
Oh, I can. I can do that. Sometimes why?
Great. So now if we know that this particular pronunciation can be represented by all of these different letters, xylem, now we got to look over here and say, does this spelling make sense? Do we understand here why somebody might have spelled it with an A?
Yeah.
That makes sense, doesn't it? Somebody might have spelled it with an E. Does that make sense?
That makes more sense to the first
Okay. A, E.
Xylem.
This one is missing something, and that's where we need to be careful. There is a phone here. We do hear it when we pronounce it, so there's going to have to be something between that. And this one is missing it. Oh, here's a U. Here's an E. Here's an E. So we've got these different spellings. Jade? Grace? So when you're spelling this out, it's not so like, oh, I can't believe you didn't spell it right. What you're doing is you're trying to pronounce it, and you're trying to do it based on what you've been told. Sound it out and spell it the way it sounds. But now we know that this sound, this pronunciation has a range of different letters that can represent it, right? Yes?
I know which one is spelled correctly.
Which one?
It is the last one on the first row.
Okay. How do you know that's spelled correctly?
Well, one, I looked at the paper and it had the word on it, and
Okay.
two, I memorized the script, and for some reason I memorized how to spell it.
Okay. It was a word that struck you and you just kind of caught on to how it was spelled? Excellent, excellent. So here we've got an EM, and that's okay because that is one of the letters that can represent that. All right. Let's look at the Z, it's represented by an X. Here is the only one where it's kind of like X, and then it went into the Z. But what about this now? Somebody pronounce that symbol. Both of these make one symbol. I. Does it make sense that someone would think it would be spelled with the letter I?
Yeah.
Okay, makes sense here. Here we're missing something. We have to remember that when we pronounce it, we write it here. Each one of these will pair up with a phoneme, right? It's the pronunciation that we are pairing up with the spelling. We're not spelling in order to be able to pronounce it. This is pronunciation. Bryce?
In the third xylem that was spelled wrong, there's yam in it. Yeah.
Yep, there is. Yeah, it's kind of like they got in the wrong order there. And here we are also missing this particular phone. It's got to be in here and we're missing it from that one. Look what happened, isn't that interesting? What do you think the person was trying to sound it out? Why do you think they included both an X and a Z?
Because when you say it, it kind of sounds like xylem.
Right. If you're thinking in your mind that X has to be X, right? The letter X has an X-ray. If you're thinking that's how we always pronounce that word, that would be exactly right. You would be going X, and then you're going into the Z. All right. Not sure this one. This is somebody who is just like letter, right? I think. And here. Now look at, isn't this interesting? What is representing this here? Pronunciation. Why? Does that make sense? Can we think of any other words where the pronunciation I is represented with the letter Y?
The sky.
Sky. Can you think of some others?
Xylophone.
Y and cry.
Y, cry,
Sigh.
and someone just said
My.
xylophone.
That was me.
Yep. Okay. So we have evidence that Y can represent that sound. So this spelling also makes sense, doesn't it? So how are we going to know which spelling is representing what a xylem is? We have to go to the etymology. We have to go and find out where this word comes from and what does it mean, this word xylem, and why does it have this spelling. Having a Y in the middle of the word instead of at the end of the word tells us what language this is coming from. You want to take a guess? What do you think, James?
Greek.
It is Greek. It is Greek, and I know that because the Y is in the middle of the word instead of at the end. We see it at the end of words a lot. Sometimes it's E as in candy, right? Party. Sometimes it's I as in sky and Y and cry. But when we see it medial in the word, that's in the middle, then we know it's from Greek. And that's why we get the spelling of using a Y there instead of an I. Understand that? These spelling errors aren't out there and crazy, are they? It looks like we have quite a variety, but you guys are using really great strategies when you're thinking about it. But now we have to add in that piece of etymology. We need to know where it comes from to help us understand. And this word xylem, I looked it up at Etymon it comes from something that means wood. Wood. And if you think about it, all the xylem in a tree, all those little tubes taking the water up and the phloem taking the water down create what when we slice that tree? Wood. Those things, once their structure, they are the things that hold up the plant, right? If you have a stem, the stem is, well, sometimes they can be kind of windy, but usually they're nice and strong, right? It's the xylem and the phloem that give a plant or a stem its support because they have that, they come from that place, especially xylem, it comes from that place meaning wood. Kind of interesting, isn't it? Okay, so we've looked at xylem. Now let's do the same thing with oxygen. Somebody tell me let me see, how do I want to word this? What's the first phone in this? Because I'd like to underline like we did there so we can look at the different letters and ways to pronounce. Ella?
AX. The AK, I mean, sorry.
So these are together?
Oh, with the AKS,
The symbol that looks like AKS represents one letter?
one letter.
Yep, one grapheme.
The A does the O for the O.
So that one is by itself. What's next, Katie?
From on the thing up there.
Excellent.
KS
Excellent.
on the X.
Okay. Next.
That one represents the A.
Yes. It's kind of sometimes called a schwa, but usually we can just say it's a symbol representing it's a small unstressed sound. What's next? Zoe, what's next?
Would it be D and G?
It would be these two symbols representing one. Yes, excellent. And then what's next? Arden. Do these two symbols work together or are they separate?
Separate.
They are separate. This one we just looked at here. We also looked at this one over here. We know it can be represented by a number of different letters. In fact, here we had even the U we could add to that. Right? It's an unstressed vowel. It's not one we put a lot of punch in when we are pronouncing a word. So we need to pair up a letter with each of these pronunciations. Okay? So the first one, I think in every situation, people chose an O. Right?
Yeah, because I think it's like stuck in the line.
Pronounced and everybody chose an O, okay? And then,
Sounds like it.
look at that. People chose an X or people chose a CS or an XS. Is that a stretch? Or is that kind of close? It is kind of close. These spellings, even though they look like whoa, aren't really that. You are using what you have been taught. You are using a lot of the knowledge you have about spelling. Now we want to fine tune it. We want to pair up pronunciation with etymology. So this we know can be represented by an X. Do you remember the other day we talked about expired? And we realized that we wouldn't need an S right behind an X. Because when you say X, you're already got that in your mouth, you're already pronouncing it. So that might say to this one, we don't need that. Can C sometimes be pronounced as K? Yes, it can. C can be pronounced as K or S. So this one makes sense that somebody would think of it. You see how close it is, even though it looks really far out and like, ooh, this is strange spelling. All right. How do we spell this? What are the choices people chose for a grapheme that would be paired up with that phoneme?
An A.
So here we got somebody chose an A.
An O.
Somebody chose an O.
I.
Somebody chose an I.
Y.
Somebody chose a Y. We have Y in a couple places. Yeah, all the letters that we already talked about that could. And I think I will because we have U there. I'm going to add that. Okay.
And Y.
And Y. Oh, right. Of course. Because that's, well, although, I don't know if we have, it's unstressed there. Oh, but it is unstressed here. You're right. Oxygen. Yep, you're right. Okay, so what about this phoneme? Bryce, what do you got in your mouth? How would you pronounce this? Great. And so what did people pair that up with? What grapheme did they choose to represent that pronunciation? Yep. And did anybody choose anything else? Nope. Everybody chose that. Okay. And then we've got again this, and people chose O, E, O, E, 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 I, E, E, O, and E. Okay. And then, and I think there's an N at everybody's except one. We've got a T. So,
Oxygen.
yeah, that, you know what that could come from? That could come from however the person used it in a sentence and was thinking, blending two words together in a sentence, and perhaps the next word was beginning with a T, blended them together. Yeah. So how do we look at all this? And I am, okay, you didn't have it spelled right, but again, I didn't tell you to memorize the spelling of it. But I'm pleased to know what you know about words and pronunciations and graphemes that represent pronunciations. Now we can work towards something. What is this word? What language is this going to be from, and how do you know?
Wait, did you say if there's a Y before the end, it's Greek, I think?
It's going to be Greek, and it has to do with the Y. Where is the Y in this word?
It's not at the end of the sentence.
It's not at the end of the word. It's medial, meaning in the middle of the word. That's your tip-off, that this is from Greek. Okay? So that gives us a reason for this to be a Y instead of an I, or instead of some of the other letters that were chosen. It's going to be a Y. And then we just have to look it up. Interesting history to oxygen. Let's do that. Yeah, I just thought this was so fascinating. Instead of just looking at it saying, oh, wrong, 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 I can look at it and say, makes a lot of sense, the choices you made. But how do we help you make the right choices? We need to find out more about this word and the interesting thing that it means and where it comes from, of course. The etymology piece is super important to our spelling. It's not just about pronunciation, is it? Nope. Mm-mm.